Welcome to the Joyfulicity podcast. I'm your host, Laura Wakefield. Today, I am honored to have as my guest, Steve Kodad. Steve is an author, a speaker, has run a successful real estate business, is a holistic business coach, and national and international Feng Shui Master. Thank you so much, Steve, for taking the time to be on the show this morning.
Oh, it is totally my pleasure, Laura. Thank you for inviting me. I appreciate it very much.
So I read on your website that you started out as a math teacher and basketball coach. Tell me a little bit about your journey. How did you go from teaching math and coaching basketball to being so involved with Feng Shui?
I've always sort of been a free thinker, very open-minded about a lot of things. Even when I was in New Jersey and I was teaching and coaching, I always tell people this story that I've always been into things like visualization. So I might have been one of the first basketball coaches in New Jersey that was getting my players to go to the foul line and visualizing making the free throw first. And I can imagine them going home and talking to mom and dad, thinking, wow, this guy's a little crazy. But I've always been very open-minded. I've always been very interested in how the mind works. That's what my first degree is in mathematics. And I did teach for about 15, 16 years and coached most of those years. But I have a lot of other interests. And when I finally moved to Charlotte, North Carolina from New Jersey, where my family was now living, my mom, dad, and my sister, who was a professor at a college there, I left because I got divorced. So my son was taken out of the state, moved to Charlotte, and became a real estate agent at that point. I wanted to get out of the classroom more than anything. It was just seemed like the walls were closing in a little bit, if that makes sense.
Absolutely.
And I always loved being outside. I always loved hiking and being in nature. So that's how I got involved with that. And that's also how I found Feng Shui eventually, because I wanted to sell my listings as quickly as possible. I had already been a certified home stager and I knew it worked, but not everybody could afford going that route. So Feng Shui was just a perfect way to go in a different direction, because there's really very little that you have to bring in. You often take a lot more out. So
Yes.
That's how we got involved with it.
That's amazing. And I would think that some of the things the skill sets that you developed with mathematics and with basketball translated very well into the understanding of the principles behind Feng Shui.
Even to this day, I always tell everybody that the best thing that happened was that I started off as a teacher, and I had to learn how to work with a lot of different personalities and try to keep them from killing each other. It was really good for me to learn how to actually speak to a lot of people, but it really had a lot to do with me being very good at and then preparing for things. I think anybody in real estate knows that prepping can be a very important thing, and some agents maybe don't do it as well as others. But I was very creative and very good at my marketing. But yeah, I'll tell you, it was a great way to start my life, my career, you might say, being in a classroom.
And I think so. I'm a former realtor. That's what I did with my career up until just a few months ago. So I have worked with stagers. I've had to do a lot of staging myself and advise people.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that quite often the successful stagers and agents are using principles of Feng Shui, even if they don't realize that they are.
I think so too. I do. Some of them are very obvious. One of the things that I like to do, if they're okay with it, is to do a space clearing to start with. But not everybody is interested in that idea. So I came up with something to sort of correct the situation without calling it that. So I used what I call the 4 big Ds to get rid of predecessor energy. Every real estate agent really wants to take the personal out of it as much as possible. Every real estate agent has walked into a house and seen a whole wall full of their photos of their family, and understanding that it's sometimes difficult for the potential buyer to then see themselves in that situation, see themselves in that home. So the 4 big Ds, real quickly, I'll tell you what they are. One is decluttering, which of course does not surprise you. And then there's depersonalizing, which again, I sort of just hit on. Another one's detailing. And that means to make sure that everything in the house works. So when the visitor comes in and they turn on a switch, that it does what it's supposed to do, for example. And then the last one is the one I get the most pushback on, called a deep cleaning. And a deep cleaning really is very pivotal. And I'm talking about from baseboard up to the ceiling and behind the refrigerator, which you haven't seen in probably 10, 15 years. Once you do those 4 things, then I wanted my people to put the home on the market. So I was never in a rush to do it that evening if they decided to hire me. And if they didn't want to do those things, they got to the point I wasn't terribly interested in them possibly working with you either. I found out it really worked really well to get rid of that kind of stuff and make it feel clean, new.
Absolutely. And every realtor that has worked with buyers knows that buyers make their decision about how they feel about a house within seconds of walking in. And it
That's
has
right.
less to do with technical details than the feeling that they have. But those technical details, like they don't necessarily recognize that it's because of the cleanliness or because of the decluttering. They just know
Right.
how they feel when they walk in and the
That's
energy
right.
that comes across. My buyers would almost always name houses. Oh, that's the house with the frog statue. That's the house with the dirty sink. They had
Right.
taglines, and you want to be that house where they walk in and say, "Oh, this feels so nice."
That's totally true. And one of the things that I harp on a lot is that feng shui actually affects your subconscious.
Yes.
And I really do an awful lot of research and stuff for myself, my school, and for people that I mentor. And one of the things that I found out years ago is that 95% of all decisions happen at the subconscious level. These are all templates that have built up over time, all your past experiences. You want to make sure that everything comes off as good as possible, certainly at the conscious level, but even more so at the subconscious level. So the use of the 5 senses is very pivotal. Getting a home sold or getting somebody to be really interested in renting a place, it's very important. So I put an awful lot of emphasis on that when I was in the field, which was, I think, about 14 years ago.
95%. That's a staggering
Yeah, it is.
that it's coming from the subconscious. And
Mm,
I could always tell when the buyers had found the one
yeah,
because they relaxed. They would walk in and they just felt at home, and I could feel a different energy coming from them. And all of that was subconscious. They maybe could identify a few things, but sometimes it was a house that was nothing that was on their wish list that they told me.
that's right. The whole idea is that one of the first things that I want to do, I'm thinking mentally here, is
Yeah.
to take away the flight or fight situation. We all walk into an environment that's new and are right away making sure we feel comfortable there.
Yes.
That situation happens sometimes very quickly. And if you don't take it away right away and make them feel really welcome, then all of a sudden a lot of other flags go up. And it's then an uphill battle for them to then buy into that particular environment. So you want to make sure that you've taken that away, that they feel real good right away. One of the things on the subconscious level, Laura, that we worry about in feng shui is the feeling secure in your environment. To do that, there's certain things that you do to soften an environment, making it feel good and feeling right. If that test is passed, then all of a sudden they feel comfortable and they stay longer. They don't run out the front door on,
Yeah.
so it's very, very pivotal to keep them around as long as possible. The longer they're there, as a better shot that they're going to possibly say, yeah, this is the one.
And that's not to say that the physical technical details don't matter, because once
No,
they have relaxed, then they're able to start evaluating those things,
that's right.
and they all feed off of each other. So let's talk about that. What are the basic fundamental principles of feng shui? Because whether you're selling a home or living in your own environment, these things are just as important once you're already in the house and or wherever you live, to create that kind of an environment for yourself. So talk to me about feng shui and some of the basic underlying principles.
It all starts with security. So to me, it's a domino effect.
Mhm.
If you take care of them feeling secure and then therefore comfortable, they then become more successful in life too. They now can focus on things that are more important to them at that point. So there's the productivity increases and everything just sort of becomes a little more positive, a little easier. But Feng Shui is based a lot about bringing nature into your life. You want it to come off as natural as possible.
Mm-hmm.
And for example, one of the things that we try to eliminate as much as possible are straight lines, and which actually represent rushing energy, rushing chi. So you see that sometimes on sidewalks. It's just a straight sidewalk. The energy is moving a little too quickly. If you have a walk up to your front door, you want to try to make it more of a meandering pattern as you can. And there are ways to do it without having to dig up the concrete. And then, of course, the hallways in a lot of houses are also straight. The energy is moving a little too fast for it to be helpful. You try to bring nature into a house as much as you can. Of course, it's plants. Live plants are very positive. And a lot of people are surprised to know that Feng Shui has a lot to do with health. Health is, of course, pivotal. And that all comes back to having a fantastic night's sleep. We talk a lot about getting the bedrooms correct, making sure that they sleep their 7, 8 hours as well as possible. And then they get up and they're ready to take on the world. But when you don't do that first step, a lot of things fall apart. Even the plants you bring in, Laura, are going to take care of certain toxins or stuff like that too. They're also used for other things too, to soften a place. So if you're going to soften the outside or you're going to soften the inside, you're trying to take away what we call poison arrows, which are sharp edges. If you think of a corner of 90 degrees, and that is pointing at your back for hours and hours while you're watching TV, or even worse, if it's coming off of a dresser and pointing right at you where you light your head when you're sleeping, we don't want that. We want to take that away. So you move the furniture, you move your favorite chair, or you do things that create obstacles like a plant or fabric or whatever. So you want to, again, give that feeling to them that they're secure and they're very comfortable. And again, then everything else sort of just comes a lot simpler.
We all know that feeling. I had an office in my previous home that I was trying to decorate, and the most convenient place to put that desk was going to have my back kind of to the door a little bit. That would have probably fit the room the best, but every time I sat down, I just felt uncomfortable.
I'm fond of saying that we've been wired the same way thousands and thousands of years ago and now. A lot of the system that was developed had a lot to do with what's called the classic armchair setup, where the idea when they put their homes up somewhere, they looked and looked for a perfect site, maybe put a third or halfway up a mountain with their backs being protected. And at the same time, they were looking for hopefully something on the left and the right that also created some support too. Those are like where you put your arms on the armchair. But at the same time, you can be able to see for miles and miles in front of you who or what was coming your way. So we still follow that. So when we place furniture in a house or in an office, we take that into account. So when you were talking about, you have your back unprotected, you have no idea who's coming up behind you. And so you're going to be less productive and less comfortable at that point. And I've used this example many times. I said, well, let's say you go to a restaurant and she or he says, sit wherever you want to. And I can guarantee you 90% are going to pick the booths on the outside and protect their backs so they can then maybe see more of the room. They don't want to go to the center.
Yeah.
And that's because they're going to be feeling less comfortable, less secure.
And I don't think it's that they actually think in this nice restaurant that anybody's going to attack them. But like you said, it's so subconscious and it's coming from instinct.
Yeah.
It's hardwired
That's
into
right.
humans.
That's really true. It's all
And
instinct.
we can't really overcome some of that instinct. So we may as well work with it.
That's exactly right. You just want to go along with it because that's going to make you feel more productive in the long run. Having your desk, for example, where you got your back to that door is not good. And another way it can be a problem is that you're looking out the window at the same time. That seems like a really good situation, but it takes your focus away quite a lot. You're going to watch a bird. You're going to watch the squirrel run around. Or you're going to maybe see something else. But you want it to have its back protected with a wall and be able to see, again, the doorway. And so that's very pivotal, including for the bed. The bed is very important that you put it in a particular safe environment. we don't really work with direction for your bed. We worry about the oldest school in Feng Shui called form school. So again, we protect our backs. We're on a solid wall, hopefully, and I can see who's entering at all times. That's the most protective situation.
Clear walkways too. When I first decorated my new house, my new home that I moved into in October is about a third of the size of my previous home. It's much, much smaller. And that was a
Yeah.
deliberate choice to downsize. But you still bring too much stuff with you and you're
Oh
trying to
yeah.
fit it all in there. And I had
Yeah.
my desk originally sitting in this place that I could get around it. But every time I was coming in and out of my bedroom, there was my chair and I had to kind of scoot around it. There wasn't
Yeah.
a clear open walkway. And I moved some things around. So where that's not true anymore, I probably only gained 6 inches of space, but my room feels double the size. It's crazy how much difference 4 to 6 inches of space in an area can make.
Oh, it really does. I mean, one of the things that I quite often run into when I tell somebody, I want to float the furniture. I don't want you up against the wall with this. And they fight the idea and say, it's going to make the room smaller. I said, no, it's not. So the idea is that you, even if it's going to be close to the wall, moving it out just a few inches creates an actual more spacious, I feel, to the whole thing. And you can sort of feel the flow of energy moving through that's not going to get stagnant. It's not going to be stopped. Very, very important of how you have things situated so you can walk through your environment in a very easy, comfortable way, and you're not going to snag your clothes on or bang your shin into something. So, it's very important to have that feeling. So, it just, again, makes life a little easier and simpler.
You mentioned the word chi a little bit earlier. Tell my audience, what is chi?
Well, chi is really like your life spirit. It's quite often I replace the word with the word energy, depending on who I'm talking with. It's what makes you and I alive. It is circulating the world. The words feng shui stand for wind and water. Those are the two most prevalent ways of moving chi or energy around the planet. Feng shui is all of it is a lot about how you manipulate chi, manipulate the feeling of the movement of the energy that comes into the environment. Back to the sidewalk situation or the walk from your car up to the front door. I always try to use things to create sort of a bumper pool effect to create the wave or the meandering. You're not going to, again, dig it up. You're going to try to do that. So you try to move the energy in the meandering pattern, which is much more natural, much more under control. And if you get that, then, it just feels right and natural. But again, if it's rushing or if the energy is stagnant, it's not helpful to you. So one of the most pivotal things for any feng shui practitioner is to get the manipulation of the qi as soon as possible, hopefully maybe even at the curve before it comes in, and then slow it down even a little bit more inside.
I like what you said a minute ago about depending on who you're talking to, you change your language a little bit because I know that like I love a lot of Eastern tradition, ancient Eastern tradition, yoga, feng shui, a lot of different things. But sometimes you'll encounter people who are very resistant and they want to say it's woo and they don't trust it and it's not science and all this stuff that they have all these internal resistances. And
Right.
my answer to that is, first of all, it's thousands of years old. But secondly, you know when you know, and it's about how you feel. And when you try it, you see, I mean, you feel the difference very palpably.
Yeah, I had to get pretty good at explaining things in a non-threatening way. I was situated in the Carolinas and beautiful area, and we were there for a long time. But that's where my feng shui career started. I have some funny stories about people making some ideas about what it is and all that kind of stuff, but it's not a religion. It's none of that stuff. But yeah, I had to make sure that I was non-threatening to some people, and they explained it in a particular way. That's in our training too. We try to make sure that you understand that not everybody is going to be gung ho about it.
So, Steve, you have several books out, and I will put the links to those books that are mostly real estate related and how feng shui can help in real estate. down in the show notes. For all of my realtor friends, check out the show notes and check out Steve's books. But I want to talk about your newest course. Tell me about that. That is not particularly real estate related, and maybe more applies to anyone interested in finding out more about Feng Shui.
My school, along with my partner Lisa Alban, is called the Intrinsic School of Feng Shui. We've been doing it for 5 years, and we certify brand new professionals. We combine it with the governing board of ours called the International Feng Shui Guild. As far as I know, we're the only school that also pays for somebody that decides to take their training with us. We pay for your first year's membership because we do think it's a very important thing for you to be part of the guild and learn from a lot of different people. Lisa is actually on the board. We take it very seriously that folks can interact with an awful lot of people from other schools. There are different types of schools also, Laura, that might surprise people. A lot of people, when they think of Feng Shui, they think of a compass, and we really don't use that much. We do a module on that so that our students understand what is going on there. And certainly, maybe you've had somebody in your car at one time or another asking to be facing in a particular direction. So we do go over how these directions are found. Everybody has 4 auspicious directions and 4 inauspicious directions. We don't put too much emphasis on the other 4. I make a thing about, let's face it, maybe your husband and you have conflicting directions kind of thing. So what are you going to do? You're going to just give up? That's not quite the way I look at it. So our school is based on the oldest school of Feng Shui. It all started with the idea of using topology, mountains, streams, trees, all that kind of stuff. It's called Form School. So that school is actually the school that basically, if there is a disagreement, and there sometimes are disagreements between practitioners, that you take that as the Bible. That's the one. So our school is involved with that. And also I guess you'd say the one that is the most attractive to Westerners, called BTB or Black Sect, Black Het. So the way you align with that is a little bit easier. You don't have to use direction. When I help somebody to try to pick the right home for them, I do use a compass because I do think that there are particular directions that are more advantageous for people than others to be comfortable. I'm sure at some time or another, you have probably in the middle of the summer when you were in real estate, going to an east-facing home, like in the morning or close to noon, and you touch the handle to open up and you burn your hand. Mm-hmm. So sometimes the half of that house is unusable for a while. And to me, that's not a great way to do it. So my house faces north. Okay. A lot of people are fine with facing south. One of the great things about facing one way or the other, north or south, is that you really can use your house a little bit more evenly, I guess. But BTB, or Black Sect, actually uses what's called the Bagua, as does other schools. And they lay it over the house, aligning it with the front door. And the reason why that spoke more to me is because I was working with existing homes. I couldn't pick up your home and move it to your favorite location. I couldn't do that.
Exactly. Yeah. If you're already living in the house, what do you do?
That's right. When you worked with a builder, or I did, I could worry about the lot and how the house would face. That's one thing. That's a different situation. And we do have modules about how to help somebody build a home. But again, I worked with primarily existing homes. And most people are very easy to work with this type of Feng Shui. One of the things we do when we were doing live stuff, which we're not doing as much anymore, it seems like most people don't want to do that. So most people are doing it online. We would take their floor plan and we show them how to lay the Bagua over top of it and how to use it to get information from it. But again, you align it with the front door. It's so much easier that way. You'd find that there are some people that don't like that situation. They think that it's not the true Feng Shui. The true Feng Shui is Form School. There's different schools, and you have to look at it. So we try to touch on all of them. Again, this is what really speaks the best to us, and both myself and Lisa That's where we took our training in.
And my understanding is that you can also lay the bagua over an individual room within a house and kind of arrange your furniture or the way that you do things within that room based on the bagua as well.
I was doing a podcast yesterday, Laura, with somebody that is an old friend of mine who lives in Myrtle Beach. And he was a realtor. That's how I met him, like, I don't know, 20 years ago or something like that. Real nice guy. He's now in Myrtle Beach, and he's into now doing photography for real estate agents. But his primary thing is measuring homes. And that can be a real tricky thing, as you probably know. It used to be so simple in the 50s and the 60s because everybody had a ranch or a
Right.
two-story, and it was very easy to lay the bagua. So we were talking about that yesterday quite a bit. And the idea is that sometimes it's so difficult to lay the bagua over an L-shaped home or a U-shaped home or whatever, or with odd wings to the whole thing, that you do have to sometimes use them in a room. So even in a two-story home, often if the master's up there, I will lay it over master room totally. And it's so much easier to do it that way. And if I can, I'll do the whole downstairs with the bagua being laid over the foundation. But you're correct about that. Sometimes that's the easiest way to do it because some of the shapes are so wild.
Not everything fits right directly into, unless you
No.
do that as part of the building process originally.
Yeah.
So who would benefit from your school? Obviously, real estate agents that are interested in knowing more about staging. Who else comes to your school?
A lot of people, Laura, really enjoy the information. They enjoy the lifestyle. They enjoy being able to help their family and their friends and themselves. Feng Shui is about being successful in a lot of ways. So it really doesn't have to be a career if you take the certification. It's certainly going to open up your eyes a great deal. The class for the intrinsic school is 42, 44 hours. You really can use it to benefit yourself, your life. To me, it's a lifestyle. Not everybody wants to become a professional practitioner to start a career. But we do have people that do it as a supplement to their career. For example, some real estate agents, probably you've seen some down months yourself, and I certainly did too. So you can always keep the door open that way by doing feng shui evaluations when you have the time. And I always tell real estate agents, this is a great way for you to make a connection with somebody who eventually will be selling. They can see you and meet you and see that you have some special skills. It's certainly a great idea for a stager, home stager, interior designer, certainly realtors. We try to make sure people understand it's a lifestyle for everybody. Everybody can benefit from it. Everybody.
Well, and I loved on your website some of the things you said, that some of the tenets or some of the benefits. You said balance, harmony, comfort, security. And those are things all want, and those can be benefited from feng shui.
That really is one of the goals, is to bring balance and harmony into a place. And a lot of environments, when you walk into them, are out of balance, whether it's because of the colors on the walls or the way things are placed. So the feeling definitely hits you when you walk into an environment, whether it's okay or not. And you're not maybe sure why. You just know it's not quite feeling right. The idea of balance and harmony to some people is maybe, oh, I don't know that I believe that. But to me, it's very obvious that something is not coming across correct. So it takes care of balance and harmony very much. But again, we've already talked about comfort and security. I mean, they might even be more important for somebody to be able to be as effective as they can in their lives.
And the nice thing about taking a class or a course like yours, or working with a professional that is certified, is that I know for most people, if they haven't studied these things themselves, they can walk into a room and they also know that something's not right. They just don't know what it is. Like, they just know this doesn't feel good to me, or it feels off balance, but they don't know what to do to correct it.
That's right. Every room is different. Every room is maybe more important than others. In feng shui, I'm very fond of telling everybody that the two most important rooms in any house are the kitchen and the master bedroom. The kitchen, of course, is going to nourish the family. It also represents wealth to people. a lot of people congregate there when they have their friends over. They get their wine out and they never leave the kitchen. So the
Right.
kitchen is very important in a lot of ways. And of course, the master bedroom is too. It goes all the way back to the idea of making sure you take care of the breadwinner. If the breadwinner is sick, unhealthy, somehow incapacitated, the whole family suffers. So the master bedroom is very important that you take care of it well. Whether there's one or two people in there, you want to make sure that they can get up the next day and be their best selves. So those two rooms are very pivotal. And when you're talking about real estate, those two have got to really blow people's minds how great they are. I even changed the aroma in the two rooms. 90% of the house, I'm going to have it as more yang, which is more, you might say, more aggressive a little bit, more focused. And so I use particular aromas for that. But then I change it one place, and that's the master bedroom, because I want when somebody walks in here to say, you just sort of hit them in the face, wow, this is something different. And for a lot of people, it's their sanctuary. When you close that door, you feel a little bit more calm and a little bit more comfortable. When somebody walks into that bedroom to feel different, I found out it really helps an awful lot to change that to something more yin, like, for example, lavender or something like that. Whereas the yang smells would be more of a citrus or a cinnamon or vanilla, those kind of things. I'm always trying to hit their senses, their five senses. But even if they're not selling, it has an effect. We want to have an aroma, a temperature in that master bedroom to be perfect for them to get a great night's sleep.
And another reason I had mentioned earlier that I moved my desk out of my bedroom because that was a confusing energy for me. Is this where I sleep and relax, or is this where I work?
Boy, sometimes, as you can imagine, I sort of have a little bit of a battle with a client that way. In Feng Shui, if you could, you'd take the TV set out too. And of course, that's always a no for a lot of people.
Yeah.
And you don't want a lot of mirrors. You don't want a mirror down at the end of the bed, for example. You maybe have read that somewhere, but you don't want all this bouncing energy, all that kind of stuff. But as I always tell people, the bedroom is for two things. It's for restoration and romance, and really not for you to do your taxes or
Right.
that kind of stuff. It's not a work site. It shouldn't be that way. I mean, I know we use it in particular ways at times. It's fine to go in there and read in your sanctuary and stuff like that, but it's really for the two big R's, you might say.
Absolutely. I liked something else you said on your website that feng shui is subtle.
There. And some people are not attuned to that. If you're going to walk into any place with a poor attitude about something, I guess you're not going to feel it. But it is very subtle. Again, it affects the subconscious. Definitely changing a wall color and all that kind of stuff is going to be obvious and will have a very large effect at times. But it's very subtle when you make these changes. There are four tools, I call them, that I teach. And one of them is making sure that the flow of energy is correct. So the pathways that you and I were talking about earlier are very important. We want to make sure that it's not straight bursts. We want it to move around in more of a meandering pattern. So that's one of them. But then another one of the tools is the yin yang or the yin yang theory. You sort of can really think of lighting as one of the things that right away jumps out about you. Lighting in a lot of environments is very poor. You can think of your classroom that you went to at high school. I didn't even like high school, if it wasn't for sports, I'll tell you. But those lights above you, those fluorescent lights that you and I you had to get used to, are not the best way to teach people. So they can cause headaches for some people. They're very uncomfortable at times. So if you think of that as a prime example of what you don't want, you really want to use lighting in a particular way. But yin yang also has to do with colors and stuff like that too. And then there's the five elements, which is very pivotal and takes a while for somebody to feel very comfortable with it. But those five elements, if they're in the right mix, in the right locations, can really definitely make a big difference. And then we mentioned the Bagua, the energy template. And that right there is one of the first things that I do when I walk into an environment. Mentally, I'm putting the Bagua over the house. I've gotten to do this so many times that I feel like I have to draw things too much. But it gives you the dominant element, for example. And often the dominant elements are not noticeable, not present at all. In Western society, where there are two elements that are way too much, we have way too much earth. And that's represented by beige carpet, beige walls, what you see an awful lot. Builders just keep pushing that color. So to me, beige
Neutral.
should be
Yeah.
outlawed. Then the other one is actually the wood element. We see a lot of that too. There's a lot of wood floors, a lot of wood furniture. Most homes have a more of a traditional touch to it. And so you see those elements all the time. I am actually shocked when I go into someplace and they're not jumping out at me. So if you think more of a modern home, if you want to call it that, contemporary home, it's more metal and glass and water, that kind of thing. So you want to try to get the mix correct. So the first thing I do is lay the bagua over, and it then tells me where the dominant elements are. For example, in the back left-hand corner is the wealth area. The dominant element is wood. So I want to make sure that wood is about 40%. Okay. I'm not talking 75% here. You always stay away from extremes. Extremes are something that's going to make you feel wrong. And I show a picture in my slides where the whole floor is wood, all the paneling is wood, the ceiling is wood, and it's beautiful. Okay. And you have a wooden desk in there and painted yourself that color and nobody finds you.
You disappear in
And
there.
yeah, I mean, it's like a perfect man's cave in a lot of ways. And it's all, how does this make you feel? It's an extreme. It's just too much. So I do a lot of befores and afters. I bring in something and I bring something else in and I explain why you're doing that kind of thing. But when you start off with all that wood in a room, it comes across as wrong. That's one of the first things.
So years and years ago, when I first started studying Feng Shui, I got very into it and I went and got all the books in the library about it. But there was a resistance in me to this idea when I would lay the bagua over my house and it would say, well, this is the wealth area. This is the connection area or love area. I don't remember all the different
Yeah.
places on bagua anymore. But I thought, how in the world is that going to make a difference? And then it dawned on me one day, and it probably should have sooner than it did, that it's all about the intention that you're placing behind it as well. It's the actual energy flow, but it's also a mental intention that you've consciously decided to focus this room on wealth or love or whatever the
Right.
things
Right.
are.
Right.
That alone, and we talk a lot about the law of attraction. In certain religions, we talk about prayer, but I think it all comes down to this conscious intention. Talk to me about that.
It's an extremely important part of our school, intention. For example, when we do a cure, myself, Lisa, when we do a cure, we come behind it and use what's called the 3 secrets of reinforcement. There's the body component, the mind component, and the voice component. And the idea behind it is that it basically multiplies the strength of the cure. I'm not sure about tenfold, but I've heard things like that. The body component in our society would be putting our hands together in prayer quite often. That's not true around the world, but that is something that my clients would feel comfortable with. Okay. The voice component is where it can be very creative. Myself and the client primarily can work on coming up with an affirmation, use a prayer, use a mantra. We do give all the mantras in our school, but not everybody wants to do it that way. They want to use the Lord's Prayer or whatever. And you say it 9 times. 9 is a very powerful number. The other thing is the mind component, which is visualization, which you and I have already talked about. And that's visualizing what you want. For example, if I'm trying to sell a house, it makes perfect sense to me that I'm going to put my hands together in prayer after I've done the house, maybe at the front door. And hopefully with my clients, we're going to say the affirmation or the prayer 9 times together while we're visualizing. The sign outside has got a sold on it kind of thing, or I'm at a closing with that or whatever. So again, the intention is very powerful. The idea is that you're sending it out to the universe and looking for some help. And it has nothing to do with any particular religion, really. It's really trying to use the energy that is around us.
You mentioned very early in our conversation about cleansing and preceding energy and releasing that. And I have found that often that's my biggest block. I'm doing all the things to bring new energies to my life, but I'm still clinging very tightly to an old one that's standing in the way. So I would think that releasing would be an important part of the process.
Yeah, it really is. And in Feng Shui, when you take stuff out, you take this excess clutter out, you now have created room for new opportunity to come into your life.
Yes.
So that's the way you look at it. And we're all looking for new, maybe even exciting opportunities in our life. But if you got too much clutter going on, you have every piece of wall space filled up and stuff, you're sort of closing yourself off from the idea of new stuff to come into your life.
You're not providing that space for it to exactly.
And that's right. That's right.
So, Steve, if somebody's interested in finding out more about Feng Shui and your books and your school, where can they find you? Tell everybody where to find out more.
I think the best place, Laura, to go is to the school that Lisa and I have, that website. And then if you're really just interested in the real estate aspect of it, you can just get in touch with me and I'll give you the other website then. But I would rather you think about potentially the life stuff. And the school is www.intrinsicSchoolOfFengShui.com. And you can go there and you can find contact information and all that kind of stuff. You can read about myself, of course, and you can read about Lisa. Lisa really compliments me very well. She was an executive for the Home Shopping Network for almost 20 years.
Wow.
And is a very creative individual. I rely on a lot of her tech. Sometimes, I think for my age, I'm probably pretty good with most tech, but I'll tell you, I don't know that I want to keep learning some of this stuff. But she's really good at a lot of things. And so we really do complement each other very well. Again, she left corporate to do this. I left real estate to do this. So I think that says an awful lot about the power and how much fun actually Feng Shui really is.
Absolutely. And I will put all of those links down in the show notes for this episode so that people can find them easily. The last question that I have for you today, Steve, this podcast is primarily based on finding greater joy in daily living. How do the principles of Feng Shui lead people to greater joy in their life?
It really makes life a little simpler, more organized. I don't know about you. When I was younger, I wasn't as organized. It's made my life so much simpler and easier. I understand a lot more about what makes me happy, but it really makes life simpler. And I love that aspect of it, that I have a pretty good idea of what's going to keep me healthy, keep me productive, keep me creative. And Feng Shui does all of those things for me. One of the reasons why I sold my real estate company about 15 years ago to just do this. The 34 agents that we had and my partner were amazed that I did it, but I did it because it brought me joy. I loved the teaching aspect of it. I loved the creativity aspect of it. And I was able to wet all my skills together, you might say, of how I looked at houses and how I prepared things and how I talked to people. But it brings me joy.
Well, I would encourage everybody to check out Steve's website. He is an amazing speaker and author and has so much to offer, and you can find out more about him online. Steve, thank you so much for being here with me today and sharing these things with my audience.
Greatly enjoyed it, Laura.
Have a great day, everybody.
Thank you for joining me today on the Joyfulicity podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please like and share, and come follow me on all major social media sites at Joyfulicity or on my website, joyfulicity.com. You can follow the link in the description for this episode to all of the places that we can connect. Have a great day, everybody, and remember, dare to dream, plan to play, live to learn.